set? Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the very warm welcome, Sean and Rick. You've got such an incredible team here. Had an opportunity to go by and say hello to all the team here at Hedel Shipyards. This is an incredible facility. It represents the best of Hamilton and the best of Ontario. Thank you so much for hosting us and showing us around. My friends, I'm here at Pier 14 in Hamilton Harbor because we have some really exciting news to share with you today. All the folks behind me, the Hedel Shipyards team, along with our hard-working Economic Development Minister, Vic Fedeli, our Finance Minister, Rod Phillips, who just delivered an incredible budget. Thank you, Finance Minister. Our local champion, MPP Donna Scully, and the great Mayor of Hamilton, Fred Eisenberger. And Mayor, you're doing an incredible job and showing incredible leadership here in Hamilton, so thank you. All these people here today have been working extremely hard to get this very important milestone done. Today, Hamilton is reaffirming its position as a titan of shipbuilding industry in this country. Hedel Shipyards has entered a historic partnership to fabricate steel ship components for Seaspan shipyards. This partnership cements Hedel Shipyards as a major supplier of Canada's national shipbuilding strategy over the next decade. They'll be making tens of millions of dollars worth of these ship components, creating highly skilled, good-paying jobs, not only here in Hamilton, but as well in St. Catharines and the folks up in Thunder Bay. And each one of these components will be made right here in Ontario. In fact, Hedel Shipyards has joined Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters Ontario Made program. They're going to put the Ontario Made logo on everything they make. My friends, as we deal with the economic fallout of COVID-19, announcements like these are now more important than ever. And Hedel Shipyards has more good news to share today. They've joined forces with Seaspan to bid on building the polar icebreakers for the Canadian Coast Guard. We can make airplanes, cars, skyscrapers, and now we're looking to make icebergs. And I've always said, folks, we can make anything here in Ontario. It's staggering. As I've traveled around the world, especially around North America, we are an economic powerhouse. We make planes, trains, automobiles, and ships. That's the manufacturing might of Ontario. That's why we're the economic powerhouse in Canada and North America. I wrote a letter to the Prime Minister myself asking for his support in this incredible bid. Because, my friends, it's clear, Hamilton is one of Ontario's critical transportation hubs. Hamilton sits at the crossroads of trade and commerce by land, sea, and sky. They've got access to the Hamilton Harbor. We're 45 minutes from the Welland Canal, a crucial link for shipping across the Great Lakes. Hamilton Airport is a major cargo hub for Purolator, DHL, UPS, and other heavyweights. The region is the nexus of CN and GO's rail networks, major highways and expressways that are minutes from the border with our largest trading partner. In fact, Hamilton was recently designated as a foreign trade zone. Hamilton and Hedel Shipyards have a major role to play in keeping goods moving in this province. And we're going to need to leverage that network to help fuel Ontario's long-term economic recovery. Our government will continue to support Hamilton. It's why we put $1 billion on the table in capital funding for the transportation and transit infrastructure. It's why we've added 157 hospital beds to provide extra surge capacity and reduce the backlog of surgeries. It's why we're providing up to 60 transitional care beds at St. Joseph's Villa Long-Term Care Bed Home, working with St. Joseph's Healthcare and Hamilton Health Sciences, and $25 million for Hamilton Health Sciences to expand their life-saving stem cell treatments. Before I hand things over to Minister Fedeli, I know there are a lot of people in this area who are looking forward to the motorcycle rally in Port Dover tomorrow, the Friday the 13th. Thousands of bikers go there. But folks, we just can't have thousands of people getting together right now. And it's just way, way too risky. Because right now, we're seeing the numbers all over the world, all over Canada, and right here in Ontario, they're climbing. And they're going in the wrong direction. It's concerning, it's alarming, and we have to stay on high alert. My friends, I'm asking people to be responsible. We've now learned that 8 sick people all attended 2 separate weddings. No one is immune to this virus. What seemed like just a small chance to see friends and family led to 17 confirmed cases. Now folks, when we do the contact tracing and follow up, some of these people have been in contact with 50 people. Do the math, you know, that's 850 people, then those people. So that's why we're concerned. Even though it's small, it just spreads. This is how the virus spreads when we don't follow simple public health advice. We've implemented new protocols to keep people safe, protocols that allow us to celebrate life's special moments like weddings. But they depend on each of us doing our part. If you're sick, please stay at home and get tested. Keep 2 meters apart, wear a mask, and please don't gather in large groups. And my friends, I know that we're all tired of this pandemic. I see it. It's pandemic fatigue out there. But we need to stay strong. We need to stick together. And that's how we'll get through this, by sticking together. Thank you. And God bless the people of Ontario. Now I'll hand it over to Minister Fedeli.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Premier. And thank you to everyone at Heddle Shipyards for hosting this event. It's great to be here for this very exciting announcement. You know, we have one of the best advanced manufacturing sectors in the entire world, and this new investment by Heddle will strengthen that even further. We were so proud that Ontario was chosen for this project. Since the beginning of this pandemic, Ontario's manufacturers stepped up like never before, demonstrating the best of the Ontario spirit. Heddle Shipyards is a great example of this with their participation in the new initiative by the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters. Just a few months ago, we teamed up with the CME to launch the Ontario Made program. Ontario Made promotes the many products that are made all across Ontario and celebrates our world-class manufacturing sector. And to have a manufacturer with a long history of Heddle Shipyards join Ontario Made is indeed a credit to this program. So the same label that is seen on products that range from baby wipes to barbecues, from cosmetics to cars, will now also soon be seen on ships. Our manufacturing sector has never been more important. At the outset of this pandemic, manufacturers stepped up with their innovative ideas and retooled their production lines to produce PPE for our frontline workers and other essential supplies in our greatest time of need. And our manufacturing sector will continue to be essential to combating COVID-19 and to our economic recovery. You know, employment in Ontario increased by 30,600 in October, marking the 5th straight month of overall employment gains. Over 886,000 jobs have returned since June, and that includes 11,500 more men and women now, this morning, working in manufacturing than before COVID began. Our economy is continuing to stabilize, but there still is more work for us to do. Attracting significant new investments from companies like Heddle Shipyards not only creates new jobs for the people of Ontario, it also enriches our province's advanced manufacturing sector. Congratulations to everyone at Heddle Shipyards on this great announcement. Thank you, and I'll now pass it over to Minister Phillips.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Vic. It is great to be here in Hamilton with my colleagues, Premier Ford, Minister Fedeli, and of course, MPP Donna Scully. I'd also like to thank Sean Padullo, the president here at Hedel, and Mayor Eisenberg for showing us a good reception here at this great event. On Thursday, I introduced Ontario's 2020 budget, the next phase of our government's response to COVID-19. Ontario's action plan, Protect, Support, Recover. Our plan has 3 pillars. First, we're protecting people from the deadly virus by increasing our health investments to $15.2 billion. Second, we're building on our earlier relief to provide a total of $13.5 billion in direct support for families, workers, and employers, in addition to $11.3 billion in cash flow support. And third, we're removing barriers to recovery and providing $4.8 billion to protect and create jobs now and in the future. This next phase of Ontario's action plan brings our total COVID-19 response to $45 billion. We need to start working on recovery now, while protecting and creating jobs today. Failing to act makes it tougher for great employers like Hedel Shipyards to create jobs, and it would mean other employers may overlook Ontario when choosing somewhere to do business. Our comprehensive plan to reduce Ontario's job-killing electricity prices is just one example of how we're protecting and creating jobs now and in the future. Time and time again, we've heard from employers considering Ontario as a place to invest or expand their business, but who decided to go somewhere else because our province's electricity costs are just too high. The problem is the result of unnecessary contracts signed by the previous governments as part of the Green Energy Act for electricity that Ontario did not need at prices that employers could not afford. A small number of people did very well from those questionable contracts, but the rest of us were left to pay the bills. For example, the price of electricity for commercial businesses increased by 118% between 2008 and 2019. That's more than 5 times the rate of inflation, and that's just too high. In Ontario's action plan, Protect, Support and Recover, we outline our plan to responsibly wind down these high contracts once and for all. Removing these costs from electricity bills will save industrial and commercial employers 14% to 16% respectively starting this January. For a mid-sized manufacturer in Hamilton, the savings would be nearly $32,000 per month or $382,000 annually. And for a manufacturer the size of Hedel, it would be many, many times that. As a result of our comprehensive plan, Ontario will go from being one of the least competitive jurisdictions in the cost of electricity to one of the most competitive. Better than the U.S. average and better than most of the Great Lakes states that we compete with for manufacturing and commercial jobs. In addition to we've been reducing property taxes for our job creators, including a 25% cut for this shipyard. We're not waiting to act. COVID-19 continues to cause uncertainty, the global economy. We will continue to provide support now and in the future. And now it's my real pleasure to introduce the CEO of Hedel Shipyards, Sean Padullo. Sean? There we go, Sean.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to begin by thanking the Honourable Premier Ford, the Honourable Minister Fedeli, the Honourable Minister Phillips, MPP Skelly, and Mayor Eisenberger for being with us here today and for supporting us each and every day in our efforts to revitalize the shipbuilding and ship repair industry in Ontario. Today, we are honoured to announce the signing of a long-term master service agreement between Hedel Shipyards and Seaspan Shipyards in Vancouver, British Columbia. This agreement will see ship components and larger modules manufactured at our facilities in Hamilton, St. Catharines, and Thunder Bay, Ontario. All of these components and modules will proudly display the Made in Ontario logo that you can hopefully see behind me here. Premier Ford, it's been a challenging year for all of us. Here at Hedel, we've been battling on a number of fronts. Battling against COVID, battling with resurrecting dormant shipyards, and battling to maintain fair, open, and transparent procurements. If there's one thing we've learned this year, it's that when you're in a battle, you want Premier Ford and his entire administration with you in the trenches. Thank you so much. Mark Lamar, the CEO of Seaspan Shipyards, has a saying, "Shipyards don't build ships, people do." He could not be more right. In the past month, our people in Thunder Bay, Port Weller, and Hamilton, and in Newfoundland, have completed some monumental projects. But in order for us to realize the full potential of Ontario's shipbuilding capacity, we need to build the polar icebreaker for the Canadian Coast Guard. Awarding the polar icebreaker to the Seaspan, Hedel, and Genoa partnership would ensure the complete revitalization of Ontario's shipyards, shipyards that once had 4,000 people working in them. This company was started over 30 years ago by Mr. Vic Fedeli. He started the company with little more than a pickup truck and a welding machine. Today, we built a lot more, and Rick's joined here today with his partner, Blair McKeel, who built McKeel Marine, one of the largest marine transportation companies in Canada. They're two guys from Winona, Ontario, just up the road. And for over 30 years, they've been supporting high-paying jobs in Ontario. Premier Ford, our people, our owners, and our partners are here to make you proud, make Ontario proud, and make Canada proud by bringing the full might of Ontario's manufacturing capacity into the national shipbuilding strategy. Thank you for being in the trenches with us. It's now my pleasure to welcome to the podium the Mayor of Hamilton, Fred Eisenberger. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Standing ovation for that one as well. Thank you. I appreciate the standing ovation and delighted to be here. And Premier, thank you very much for coming to Hamilton and showing us that our province is caring and concerned about the economy in Hamilton and right across the province, and to Minister Phillips and Minister Fedeli as well. Those key signs of concern and care are very, very important as we continue to fight COVID and realize the challenges of getting our economy back into place. As the Premier pointed out, we are very proud of our diverse economy. We have diversified. The Conference Board of Canada said we have the most diversified economy in the country as a municipality. And one of the reasons is that the multimodal transportation network that we have running right through the city of Hamilton. The Premier just talked about that. We have the 400 series highways. We have rail coming through here as a hub. We have, of course, the close proximity to our U.S. borders, some 50 million customers not too far away from both the southern and the eastern border, and the largest cargo express airport in the country at John C. Munro Airport, just recently announced to be a free trade zone. So, the opportunity for movement of goods and production of goods and manufacturing is still very, very strong in the city of Hamilton, and the port has been integral to that over the many, many decades. And I can tell you that, a number of years ago, I was the chair of the Hamilton Port Authority, and I can tell you that we had a devil of a time getting the province of Ontario to recognize that the port even existed. Their continuous argument was it's a federal responsibility. Go to them for any resources or things that you might need. Happy to hear and see that the provincial government has actually stepped forward and said that shipbuilding is very, very important. Cargo movement is very, very important in the shipping industry. So what a great opportunity to continue to build on that with the province of Ontario. I'm pleased that that Ontario is taking this step. Very proud of Fedeli Marine and the work that they've been doing here for generations, in fact. And happy to see McKeel Blair here today, who has been a foundation of our national shipbuilding industry, not only here, but right across the country. And of course, to fulfill the national shipbuilding strategy, this is one giant step forward to be able to land these contracts and provide the level of employment that we're doing. So congratulations to Sean Padulo and the entire Fedeli team. And of course, we expect and anticipate that there's going to be continued growth in the shipping industry. I've said many, many occasions that I'm still disappointed that short sea shipping hasn't been, which is very hard to say. Try that yourself quickly a number of times. That short sea shipping has not yet fulfilled its potential, but the potential is absolutely there to offload some of those containers off of our roads and put them onto barges and move that, much more cost effectively, I think, to other places where it needs to go, and then use the last mile opportunity for the trucking industry. So we are very, very high on our port. We are very, very high on our movement of goods opportunities, and we really appreciate the leadership of the province and of Fedeli Marine, making sure that Hamilton gets its fair share of opportunity employment as we continue to move forward. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, Premier. Thank you for the work you're doing, both on COVID and on economic recovery. A difficult task at very best, and you're doing it spectacularly well, in my opinion. So thank you. And it is my pleasure to introduce our local MPP, Donna Skelly, to come up and say a few words. Donna?
Thank you, Mayor Eisenberger. Well, today's announcement is certainly exciting news for Heddle, for the City of Hamilton, and of course the entire shipbuilding industry right across Ontario. The fact that this is the very first time that Heddle Ontario shipyards will support the national shipbuilding strategy in a construction capacity is absolutely incredible. The contract to build Ontario-made modules for 2 Navy Joint Support ships and the offshore oceanographic science vessel will create and support hundreds of high-paying jobs in our region. We all know how seasonal and cyclical shipyard work can be. This contract will ensure predictable and steady fabrication work for a number of years at all Heddle facilities in Ontario. Today's announcement reinforces Hamilton's position as a critical transportation hub for trade and for commerce. It reinforces our government's commitment to build a foundation for a strong economic recovery. This contract announced today is a tremendous economic opportunity for the City of Hamilton. It's a tremendous opportunity for shipbuilding right across Ontario, and it will help revitalize the shipbuilding industry right across the country. And now I'd like to pass it back over to the Premier.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Donna, and thank you, Mayor. And before we get going, I just have to say, I love the people of Hamilton, and we're showing a lot of love to the people of Hamilton over the last little while. And one personal note, if I can just ask for a favor from some folks. On a side note, my phone is blowing up. I apologize if I can't get back to you, but folks, I appreciate the advice, but I'm getting 200 to 300 calls a day, messages. So if I don't respond, I apologize. So I just wanted to point that out because I believe in returning every call, but I just can't keep up now on these messages. So just bear with me. We're ready to take questions.
We'll go to the phone line for questions. It's 1 question and 1 follow-up, please.
Your first question comes from Randy Rath with CHCH TV. Please go ahead.
How you doing, Randy?
Hi, Premier. Welcome to Hamilton.
Yeah, it's always great to be here.
This morning, another Hamilton politician held a press conference where Edgar Horvath called for flipping a circuit breaker and putting the high-risk areas, the hot zones, into a modified stage 1, where the only things that would be open would be hospitals and schools, and called for the government to pay businesses during this 2-week period. What do you make of that? Does that make sense? If not, why not?
Well, that's her perspective. We're taking a little more of a balanced approach, which I think is absolutely critical. We're listening to the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Williams, and it's absolutely critical. How can you measure, as I always say, how can you measure the depression, the mental health of businesses and the owners when all of a sudden they go belly up? They put everything they have in their lives into their small business, be it a restaurant or a gym or any other small business, and you just want to shut them down. And to say that, we should pay every single person, we put billions and billions of dollars supporting jobs and people. So we're taking a balanced approach, but we're listening to our health table as well.
Follow up.
There's a story out today that you ignored advice from public health officials when you set up your color-coded system, and that you lied to the public about that. How do you respond to that?
Well, that is just totally inaccurate, and I'm a little disappointed on that note, but that's one doctor's perspective that sits on the disease prevention table. At the end of the day, I stood here when we put this out with Dr. Williams. We went along with the framework, and he approved the framework. Now, again, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. We have to do a balance. We could go, the easy thing to do, folks, is sit back. Let's just shut down the whole province. How do you deal with the mental health again of people? It's easy for people to say just shut everything down when they're guaranteed a paycheck every single week. How about these hardworking folks here at Heddle Shipyards Talk to the workers over there. If all of a sudden I went out there and said, guys, you're all shut down, and by the way, you aren't getting a paycheck, go collect unemployment. I'd like to see the reaction they have when they're working safely. So the approach of just saying shut everything down is not the approach we're taking. We're taking a balanced approach. Number one priority is the health and safety. And right beside that is the economy.
Next question.
Your next question comes from Katrina Clark with Hamilton Spectator. Please go ahead.
Hi, Katrina.
Hi, Premier. Thanks for taking my question.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm squinting at you.
Over
These
the
lights
weekend,
are high.
the City of Hamilton
Yeah.
fined a Stony Creek restaurant $3,000 for violating the Reopening Ontario Act. The
Yeah.
city says the restaurant wasn't taking down people's contact information and it wasn't enforcing mask wearing or physical distancing. The city, however, won't name the business, though they do plan to name businesses that break COVID rules moving forward. Other regions do things differently. Burlington says it won't ever name businesses as that is not public information and could be an invasion of privacy, while Ottawa releases charge information upon request. Why is there no consistency when it comes to disclosure of bad actors across the province, and should cities release the names of rule-breaking businesses?
Well, before I think I'm going to answer it, but before or right after, I'll pass it over to Mayor Eisenberger. It's his town, and he's the commander-in-chief here. But people have to be responsible. I mentioned the wedding in my speech. Folks, you know, from 8 people going to a wedding that they know they were sick, what I understand, and all of a sudden it started spreading to 50 contacts each, and those 50, we have to be responsible. I've always said the government, the federal, the provincial, and the municipal government, we can put every protocol in place. If the people aren't following the protocols, it's just not going to happen. So we need everyone to make sure we follow the protocols, and you know, if just stick with the 3 major protocols that we always say: the social distancing, and make sure that you always sanitize your hands and wear a face covering, and keep the social distance 2-3 meters. Obviously that never happened at the wedding, and I'm really disappointed after being up here and preaching every single day. A restaurant wouldn't follow simple protocols. So, you know something, they got fined. You know, something, I stick up for the small business and restaurants, but guys, this is too simple to cover. This is what puts, you know, a broad brush across all these other restaurants that are following the protocols, doing a great job, because of one bad actor. Guys, get it together. I'll pass it over to the mayor.
Yeah, I did. Thank you. So thanks for the question, Katrina. And as you well know, the public health has made a distinction between COVID-related, so an outbreak, where there's a real significant concern in terms of public health, and they certainly named those locations, and the difference between those that have been charged by law for not maintaining physical separation and those kinds of things. So as of yesterday, the council did indicate that we are prepared to on request, name the restaurants or the locations or businesses where these infractions are happening. And as the Premier indicates, I mean, most of the infractions that we're seeing and cases that we're seeing are not as a result of these kinds of actions, although they can be problematic. Most of them are as a result of social gatherings in the broader community, in homes, wherever they might want to get together, that are not maintaining physical distancing or the kind of separations that are required. And that then is leading to, you know, the ongoing spread. And that then could lead to them taking it to restaurants and other locations. So we're going to continue to focus on the areas that need attention in terms of eliminating the spread. You know, it doesn't matter how perfect a system we make. If people aren't willing to adhere to it, then you know, it doesn't really matter the systems we have in place. But by and large, the population throughout Hamilton and certainly throughout Ontario have done the right thing. But we have areas where people are just ignoring or flouting the bylaw or the concern around COVID spread. And we want to focus in on the areas of concern rather than punitive measures against people that are doing the right thing.
Follow up.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
this question is regarding transit in Hamilton.
Sure.
and this is for Premier Ford.
Yes.
Has the province decided whether to endorse LRT or bus rapid transit for Hamilton? And if so, when will the public hear the decision?
Well, we're working closely with Mayor Eisenberger, and we've been working closely all along. We have $1 billion sitting at the table. We're going to need support from the federal government, but I can't give you a direct answer 100%. The ideal situation is to do what the mayor wants to do. If everyone agrees, is the LRT. But again, I don't think we're there 100%. We need the feds to come to the table, see how much they're bringing to the project, and then we can all sit down. But it's absolutely critical. We're collaborative. We work side by side with Mayor Eisenberger and the City Council, because everyone's going to be pitching in. The folks of Hamilton, they're going to be paying some. The province is going to pitch in, and the federal government. But I think it's a good project. We just have to get moving on it.
Next question.
Your next question comes from Nicole Lampa with CTV Kitchener. Please go ahead.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Premier. Thank you for taking my question.
Thank you.
Now, Waterloo Region has seen our case counts double in the last week. There's an outbreak from a restaurant. It's now at 11 cases, and as many as 175 people may have been exposed. And Elmira plant has 100 people at home self-isolating because of an outbreak with 9 cases, and 24 people now have COVID related to a wedding. This, as local hospitals, acute care, and ICU beds are close to capacity. Infectious disease experts suggest our medical officer of health has to follow what Peel Region did in Dr. Lowe's footsteps. Have you heard from our medical officer of health for assistance, and would you recommend Waterloo Region move to the orange or even the red zone?
Well, you know, it just infuriates me when I hear these stories. Like, again, as I said, Mayor Eisenberger said, guys, we have to follow the protocols. I have not spoken to the local medical officer of health. They'll be dealing with Dr. Williams and his team. But you sit back and we're all trying. Believe me, we're trying as hard as we can around the clock. But then you have these reckless folks that go out there and they don't practice, social distancing or face masking. I got to ask you a question. Is that the same restaurant a few weeks ago or a month ago in Waterloo that they were all jumping around without masks and going wild, or is that a different restaurant?
It's a different restaurant. The public health unit here named it.
Okay.
They say Algarve Restaurant in Kitchener now has the outbreak, and it's the restaurant with 11 cases. They say it comes from a social gathering that then went to the restaurant, and from there, as many as 175 patrons may have been exposed between October 28th to November 4th.
Yeah, again, that's why we're sending in inspectors. I think we've done close to 25,000 inspections. Obviously, we have to continue ramping it up by the restaurants. But again, folks, I don't know what I have to do. Every single day I'm pleading to follow the protocols, no matter how much money. We can throw hundreds of billions at this. We can throw everything we can. But if there's certain groups of people that don't want to follow the procedures, it's not going to be good. It is not going to be good for all of us. What we're trying to do as a government is avoid at all costs a lockdown, a complete lockdown. And people keep doing foolish things like this, and the numbers continue to start going up, well, then we're going to have to deal with it. But I'm so disappointed. I hear these stories. So disappointed.
Next question.
Your next question comes from James Murray with Net News Ledger. Please go ahead.
Hi, James.
Greetings, Premier, from Thunder Bay, Ontario, where the Heddle shipyards will start running again. And it's a 100-year-old facility, so it's great to hear manufacturing.
Yeah, can't wait to get up there, by the way.
Increase manufacturing jobs with contracts like this in Ontario and specifically in northwestern Ontario.
Well, this is a big federal contract, and I wrote a letter. I know Premier Horgan wrote a letter as well. And, there's some big contracts happening right now. In Quebec, what I was told today, we're getting some sole source shipbuilding. Okay, fine. You want to do that, that's fine. They got their piece of the pie. Now we need our piece of the pie here. We need our piece of the pie, and I'll be speaking to the Prime Minister, and we'll mention it on the call tonight. But we need our slice of the pie here in Ontario when it comes to these large icebreakers. This gives certainty to these hardworking folks here for not a year, but for 10 years. 10 years of good paying jobs that they can plan to go buy a house. They can plan to put their kids through university or college. That's what we need. We need our fair share here in Ontario. And when we get our fair share here in Ontario, it benefits Newfoundland, it benefits the people of BC, it benefits Thunder Bay, St. Catharines, and Hamilton. So I'm going to be pushing hard for our slice of the pie. Enough's enough. I love Francois Legault. I love Quebec, but they're full. They have their big slice of the pie. Now it's our turn.
Follow up.
So in the transportation sector, which creates these really good paying manufacturing jobs,
yeah,
we have an amazing plant. And, coming off of Remembrance Day yesterday, what is now the Bombardier plant made the Hawker Hurricane in World War II.
Yeah.
It's made streetcars and light rail transit for Toronto. There's some small contracts coming. What can we be doing to get more work for manufacturing here in Western Ontario?
So up in Thunder Bay, talk about giving love. I've given a lot of love to the folks up in Thunder Bay. I went to the Bombardier plant. We bumped up some orders to secure some jobs for them. I think it was 200 or 300 additional jobs. I'll do whatever it takes to support the people up in Thunder Bay and Bombardier, Resolute Paper as well up there. So we're going to continue making sure we create an environment for companies to thrive and grow and prosper, and by making sure that we have a fair tax system, a property tax system. And do you know who's the best to speak about this? Is the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Economic Development. So if you can give each one of them a minute, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Premier. Thank you for the question. So when you think about where we were 2 years ago compared to today, a week ago I would have answered it this way, that we have lowered the cost of doing business in Ontario by $5 billion. So by reducing our WSIB by over $2 billion without reducing the premiums, by bringing in what's called an accelerated capital cost, which means businesses can write off their expenses, their new manufacturing equipment in year. So all of those things have created the environment that saw us add 300,000 jobs in the province of Ontario. When you look back to February, before COVID, there were 250,000 unfilled jobs in the province of Ontario. And since that time now, we've seen, as I said earlier, 868,000 of those jobs come back. Today, this morning, 11,500 people, more people, men and women, woke up to work in manufacturing than did pre-COVID. And since that time last week, when we used to say $5 billion, that number has now grown to $7 billion. And I think the Minister of Finance will give you the explanation of the extra, where that extra money is coming from. Thank you.
Thank you, Vic, and thank you for that great question. When it comes to making manufacturing competitive across the province, the budget that I introduced last week will reduce the price of electricity for the kind of manufacturers you're talking about, like Bombardier, by 14%. That's going to be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and across other sectors like mining, it'll be millions of dollars to make them more competitive. When it comes specifically to that plant, and it's been talked about today, important projects like transit here in Hamilton, or like the subway project that we have endorsed, $27 billion of growth in terms of subway systems across the GTA. Those are all projects that are ready to go from our perspective, and we do need our federal partners to step up. We'll be ready to order plenty of train cars, plenty of LRT cars, plenty of subway cars, and Bombardier would be just a fantastic place to get them from. But we do need our federal partners, and they've been great partners through COVID, to step up, say they're going to be supporting those investments so that we can create long-term opportunity for those employees up at Bombardier and really help them be the world-class manufacturers that we know they are. Thank you.
Next question.
Your next question comes from Rob Ferguson with the Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Premier. Thanks for taking my question.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on the story we had on the front page today, it seems to me that you used to follow the scientists a lot more last spring than you are doing now. So I'm wondering what's changed.
Yeah, Rob. No, I appreciate it. And you know something, I appreciate the doc voicing her opinion, and I really do. And I'm sure she's working her back off. And I don't like pinning the docs against politicians versus the health table. And everyone has their opinion. I respect everyone's opinion. But the fact is, Rob, that Dr. Williams came to us with a framework. The cabinet approved the framework. And ultimately, at the end of the day, there's different tables that report into Dr. Williams and give their point of view, and I respect everyone's point of view. But there is no light between Dr. Williams and myself. And as you can ask him at 3 o'clock, there's never once Dr. Williams has ever come to me from the beginning of this pandemic and said, Premier, I think you need to do that. And I've said no, never once. I've always worked with him. He understands law. Do you know who else? Dr. Edges. Dr. Edges in Ottawa. I think in one of the notes that I was reading, and along with Dr. Williams, there has to be a balance. Priority number one on health and safety, but very close beside it is the economy. And it wasn't Rob, and it wasn't you, but it wasn't long ago, a few weeks ago, that the media was telling me, well, why are you going against these small businesses? Why don't you let them open up? All we're trying to do, Rob, is create a balance. But I will always, and I'll never deter from it, listen to the health and science. And I appreciate, do you know as solid as a rock, Rob, is Dr. Williams. He's incredible. He's very balanced. His team is balanced. And just imagine the position he's in. He's getting 70 docs all telling him, this, that, and the other thing. And there's a lot of differing opinions. And I respect that. Everyone's trying. That's all I can tell you. Everyone is trying their hardest.
Follow up?
Yeah, thank you, Premier. I'm just wondering how you stick to that, though, in the face of what we're seeing. We're seeing lots of doctors and epidemiologists come out and say this isn't working. And we have hit new highs in COVID-19 on 5 of the last 6 days.
Yeah.
You yourself are saying that the numbers are going on the wrong direction, but you don't seem to be doing a lot about it. So how do you square all this together?
Well, okay, I'm going to respectfully disagree. We aren't doing a lot about it. We put together this framework, and it was the baseline for early intervention. Before we had this framework, there was regions out there that didn't have anything to go by. They had no framework to go by. At least now we have the framework that we understand. And people out there, yes, I agree, sometimes it's confusing, but it allows us in the health table and everyone in Ontario the flexibility to be able to move quickly, opposed to not having a framework. And again, I want to repeat, this framework was given to us through Dr. Williams and his team, and we went forward with it. That doesn't mean, Rob, we can't change this. Nothing in this pandemic is concrete. Nothing stays the same, as you know, and this is very fluid. It just moves like rapid fire, and when it moves, we move with it. But I understand what you're saying, Rob. I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Last question.
Your final question comes from David Atkin with Global News. Please go ahead.
Hi, David. How you doing?
Thanks for taking my question, Premier.
Thank you.
In the 70s, Pierre Elliott Trudeau invoked a national emergency, invoked federal emergency powers to fight inflation. We've been speaking to some epidemiologists and more doctors who can't believe that Justin Trudeau has not invoked emergency powers to fight the public health emergency. Emergency powers he might use, for example, to impose a travel ban on some regions in Ontario. In other words, it's time to bubble, for instance, the GTA, at one point maybe bubble Ottawa, etc. What do you think about the appropriateness at this point of the federal government invoking and using some of its emergency powers?
That wouldn't go over too well, not just with me, with all 12 other premiers. That's not their jurisdiction. We don't need the nanny state telling us what to do. We understand our provinces, and I'll tell you, he'd have a kickback like he's never seen from, not just me, from every single premier. That just wouldn't fly. What I do believe in, and we've been doing it, we work extremely well with the Prime Minister, with the Deputy Prime Minister. All the ministers are in constant communication. That's the way you get things done, not by implementing restrictions and the feds telling us what to do. That would not fly.
Follow up?
Yeah, short of invoking emergency powers, again, this is the same sort of public health experts suggest that here's one thing the federal government may wish to do. It may wish to directly fund the 30-odd local public health authorities. In other words, allow those local public health authorities to directly access federal funding, say, for more contact tracing resources, et cetera. Would you be open to allowing, Peel, for instance, Peel Public Health, to directly access federal funding without needing any say-so from the province?
No, again, they're crossing the boundary. There's one thing I understand about all the premiers is stick within your own jurisdiction. And any time the feds, and it doesn't matter, I'm not pointing out just Justin Trudeau, even the prior Prime Minister Harper, any of the prime ministers, you don't go into the jurisdiction of the province. And one of the jurisdictions is health. What I would love to see from the federal government is an increase in the Canadian health transfers. We need to sit down because, again, we're getting 22% of health spending as it's escalating, 6-7% compounded every year. We need to have a discussion about the Canadian health transfers, and how it works is come through the province, and the province has been very fair with all 444 municipalities in supporting them. So everyone, let's stick to our knitting. You stick to the federal requirements, we'll stick to the provincial, and we'll work hand in hand with the municipalities.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.